a shocking week one. Is that hyperbole? Is that too much exaggeration to say that it was a shocking week one?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we've got storylines all over the place. I think, we've got, obviously, we're going to talk all about the ACC today. I obviously think that we have, some good storylines coming out of the Big 12. I think the SEC is what we thought the SEC would be with Georgia and Texas and Bama. That seemed pretty straightforward. And then you have the Big 10. And I think, Ohio State is obviously off to a nice start. And so I think it leaves the ACC in this position where, basically every other conference is kind of, I mean, I know Texas Tech had that scare and there's some injury report issues and we're going to talk about that.
But scare?
Yeah. I mean, you
that was embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
You call that a scare?
Still won the game.
52-51.
Still won the game.
And you may have lost Taj Brooks in the process. I think Texas Tech is hiding under the cover of a pretty dominant Big 12 weekend and a really bad ACC weekend. I think Texas Tech is one of the biggest stories in this conference.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, yeah, they didn't play well. Again, we could be talking about you getting off to a losing start to your season. But we're not talking about that. No one's going to give a damn about this game later in the year if you handle your business moving forward. And I understand that, people wanted to say all weekend, oh, well, that was a terrible performance and, Tech looks awful. And I agree. They did not play well. I'm not saying they did. But what I am saying is you found a way to win the game.
Joey Maguire is on the clock. The love story, the honeymoon, the speciality of the high school phenom, coaching at Tech. No, that's all over with. That's all over with now. The embarrassing defense. There's no way to sugarcoat it. And I think I've talked all summer long about this, that I think Texas Tech is one of the most important brands in this league. And to give up 51 points to Abilene Christian, sorry, dudes, that is embarrassing. That is woeful. That is terrible. I think if you are at all concerned about going to a bowl game, this game should have terrified you. And if you're a Texas Tech fan and you're not wondering if Joey Maguire can coach college football, I don't know what you're looking at. I mean, it is as simple as that. The Baron Morton goes 378 and 5 touchdowns without an interception, and that wasn't good enough to win the game. That you lose Taj Brooks, who went for 153 and a score, and you almost lose the game. I'm amazed by it. I'm amazed that you gave up 506 yards to an Abilene Christian quarterback. 506 passing yards. That's embarrassing. But this game was on the road. Oh wait, it wasn't on the road. Actually, it was at Jones AT&T. So you can't spin this.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you look at the results this weekend in the Big 12, and you ask yourself, what was the most troubling performance in this conference? How do you pick anybody other than Texas Tech?
Well, I would agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I don't, like I said, I don't think there's any getting around that. Obviously, all the things you just said are true, and I still maintain that, again, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if Joey were to actually figure out how to play some defense and, win some games and be, 3-2, 4-2, 5-2, be a solid team in the middle of the pack most of the year. No one's going to remember this in week one. But the problem is that when you do this against Abilene Christian, it doesn't give people a lot of faith that you're going to improve.
Look at Arizona. We were all worried about, what was Arizona going to be? They were exactly what we thought they would be. They would be tremendous. The Fighting Fafitas and Tetaroa on offense, that's all their offense was. And it's a little concerning that Arizona gave up 39 points to New Mexico and needed a massive performance out of that QB wide receiver. Because, listen, if T-Mac doesn't go off, and what did he have? 7,000 yards receiving, I think. 10 catches, 304 yards, and 4 scores.
I'm for real.
If Tetaroa doesn't go off, does Arizona win that game?
Probably not.
They probably don't.
Yeah.
But that's Arizona. We don't expect anything from Arizona football. Coaching change, talent change. Okay, great. You look up and down this conference. Great stories. Arizona State. I warned you about Arizona State, right? We've talked about them. Little disappointed in West Virginia. Oak State gave up 20 points to South Dakota State, won the game as advertised, right? But you look at Kansas was a little concerning. But there's no doubt the most shocking performance this weekend was Texas Tech in Abilene.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm overreacting to it.
Well, I don't necessarily think you're overreacting to it. I think that this is a classic college football game of both sides of the football, meaning that, hey, offense was amazing, right? Like Baron Morton was great. Like, offense did their job. But the defense was so crappy against a team that should not even be on the same field as you that we can't celebrate that and we can't feel good about that. I mean, if it had been, 52-20 like Oak State, right? Then we would be like, oh yeah, hey, like 20 was kind of a lot to give up, to Abilene, but you still want to, you still easily won the game, over 50 points, everything's fine. So that's why I say like it's unacceptable what you did on defense in that game. There's no question about that. I agree. Joey's on the clock. Like the Cinderella story, the new car smell, all that nonsense is over with. But at the end of the day, you won the game. And if you can go out and just be serviceable on defense, you're going to be fine. Your offense showed you that.
Well, you're starting to figure out that what happened in Laramie last year was not an accident. I think obviously the story of the weekend is Florida State 0-2. I have no idea. I have no idea where you go from here. Your season's over. You lose to Georgia Tech. You lose to Bill O'Brien in BC. And DJU, I don't know what. Your crowd was chanting for the backup last night. And I even tweeted, it's time. Like, I don't know how you stick with DJ Uiagalelei. I feel bad for the kid. He was serviceable at Oregon State, but this is the same guy we saw at Clemson.
Well, and the reality is he had multiple opportunities to win that game for Florida State last night. I mean, multiple missed, end zone
wide
throws,
open,
like wide open, like, and everyone wants to, the one going, the post route into the corner, that's wide open, can never miss that. Like that should get you pulled from a game just on premise alone. But the tight end throw at the back of the end zone, that was kind of a physical play. People are riding DJ about that one. That wasn't even the worst throw of the night, but I just look at this Florida State team and I'm like, dude, you can't have this as a program right now after everything that went down in the offseason, after what happened last season. Like, this just is unacceptable. Like, you have to at least be, in the conversation for the playoff, and now that's over with.
I think that the biggest problem for Florida State is not DJU. They don't have a defensive line. I think that's the biggest problem for Florida State. It's shocking. And after the game, Mike Norvell, this is neat, but nobody wants your apology, bro.
First off, congratulations to Boston College. They did a good job tonight. Obviously came in and did the things they needed to do to win the game. For us, I'm just sick to how the season started. Obviously tonight, I failed in preparing the team to be able to go out and respond tonight. And just the things that were necessary for us, things we talked about, things we emphasized. Obviously, in all phases, we're not able to execute. Obviously didn't put them in a position to showcase what I believe that this football team is, and it's extremely disappointing. And I apologize to our fans, apologize to everybody associated with the program. I mean, that was extremely disappointing that we're not better.
I guess. I mean, you're not a good football team. You're not talented, and I totally get it. a massive exodus of skill position players. It's going to be tough to hold that bar. You're not better than Georgia Tech and Boston College. That's a problem. And you know what everybody's saying, and I think we're all saying the same thing. Well, maybe if you weren't worried about a court case, you'd have won a football game. And I think it is very fitting. This is one of the least likable programs in the country at Florida State. They're whatever this saga is, this mission is, to bring down the ACC. It feels like an anvil around your neck now. It feels like everything about Florida State is not good. And I look at Clemson, same thing with Clemson. This league is in a remarkable space and time in that I think Florida State is one of the biggest disappointments in the entire country. I think there's no fixing that. And I think the bigger issue for Florida State is the Miami Hurricanes dominated Florida, and I think are very clearly the best football team in the state of Florida right now. And I'll say what most people probably should have said, which is college football is better when the Miami Hurricanes are good.
Absolutely. And I think that, that was absolutely that was one of the best games of the weekend. And I think that, number one, happy for Cam Ward. You transfer, like you're in a new opportunity on a new squad, and absolutely balled out. And I think that, he looked good doing it. I was a little concerned in the first half when he threw that interception back across the field. And, the broadcast was saying, oh, it was tipped, yada, yada. The reality is he missed that throw. The throw was out of position. The receiver couldn't get to it, so it hit his fingertips instead of the palm of his hands, and it gets intercepted. But other than that, Miami looked outstanding. And I think when you talk about, it's good for college football when Miami's good, the thing that stands out to me is all the trash talking after the game. The Miami Hurricane players being, near the Florida, recruits and saying, hey, we're the best program in the state, and like all that rah-rah stuff and that trash talk, I think is
it's not trash talk though. It's not trash talk anymore, right? Like they find me a team that's better in the state of Florida than the Miami Hurricanes.
Yeah, right now they're the best team for sure.
Yeah, right. So I don't think it's trash talk anymore. I think that when you look at Miami, and you look at the depth at wide receiver that Miami has, and they didn't even run the ball that well. They averaged 4.5 yards a carry running the football. That's not bad, but that's certainly not elite level running. They won this game because Cam Ward showed up with drip and swagger, and he played his ass off. And I agree, his overconfidence in his arm very may well be their undoing, because you can't make, what was it, half a dozen throws across the middle of the field that were pretty reckless. Now he got burned on the one and had two more that were nearly picked. He'll clean that up.
Right.
And if he does, I think there's a real chance they win 10 games.
Facts.
And if they win 10 games, they're going to play for a conference championship, and they're probably going to wind up in the college football playoff.
Well, and the thing I love about Cam's game is, you can see how his mobility and his vision and understanding of the offense would translate against a better defense. If he makes better decisions, if he takes care of the football a little bit better, they're going to be a tough offense to defend, because he has the arm strength to beat you over the top. But he also has the ability to throw from different arm slots and to be creative. He can get it out to the flat easily. Like, there are a lot of things that he can do that I could easily say, okay, if Miami was playing, top tier SEC team in the playoff, I'm not sure they win that game, but I think that's a great game. I think that's a very close game down to the wire. And it's just going to come down to them showing this level of play for the entirety of a season, and not getting lazy next week after you just beat Florida.
Yeah, and Graham Mertz is trash. Like, that defense, I thought that was one of the most entertaining performances of the weekend. I'm sure that Miami is going to be a top 10 team in the AP poll. I thought it was one of the most entertaining games of the weekend, and it's just so wildly impressive to me that here we are, and we're looking at a situation where, you've got to find a way. And again, this is just my opinion, but I think you have to find a way now. If you are Miami, you've got to find a way to win this conference at all costs. You look at their schedule, Florida A&M, Ball State at South Florida is going to be a game because South Florida is better than people think. Virginia Tech was another team. Were you guys surprised how bad Virginia Tech was? I was a little surprised by that. But they're Virginia Tech, and then they start October on the road at Cal, at Louisville. That's going to be a real test. Florida State in Miami. Duke at Miami, at Georgia Tech now looks like a game. Here we are, week 1 in the books now, like we've played 2 weeks of college football. Well, guess what? Georgia Tech looks like a team that's got to be dealt with. And I don't see a schedule here where they don't win 10 games.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that, before the season started, if you looked at this schedule, you would have said, well, you're probably losing to Florida State. You're probably losing here or there. But now that we know who people are, like, I just, for the ACC's sake, like, Miami has to be that guy now. You have to be able to get into the college football playoff and at least make some noise. And I think the ACC has immense pressure on it, with Miami. Like, if you get it, like, obviously, your conference champion gets into the college football playoff, obviously. But I think if that's it, like, if you don't have anybody else, it's just your conference champion in, presumably Miami, like, that's just not good enough for the ACC. And it certainly doesn't help your case in, when you look at it in the big picture with where the conference is at. Yeah.
And Clemson, I think Clemson's defense was better than we thought, because that Georgia offense is actually pretty good. I'm not sure. I believe Kirk Ferentz is the new head coach at Clemson, because I could be wrong. I don't remember seeing an offensive snap for Clemson.
We built this program on NIL.
I don't think it happened. I'm not certain. Clemson's not good offensively.
No.
And again, I understand that's arguably the best defense in the country at Georgia. You can't score 3 points. You can't. And as much as Joey McGuire's on the clock, is there another coach in this country that needs firing more than Neil Brown, or more than Dabo Swinney?
Well, and I think, the point you made earlier about Texas Tech hiding under the, guise of, like, the ACC being terrible and, like, these other storylines. Like, I think Dabo gets a free pass for that performance because it is Georgia. And I think, Dabo hasn't had the opportunity to pull a Florida State against a team that they should not lose to. And the problem is Cade Klubnik is just not dynamic. He's not somebody that is going to come out here and cover your shortcomings as an offense. And so, we get to the half of this game, and I think it was like 6-0 at the half or whatever. Like, it was a low scoring game at the half. And Kirby in the interview is like, oh yeah, we just need to run the ball better. We need to make a few more plays offensively, and we're well in control of this game. And then what do you know? They come right out, and what do? They run the football. They do what they're supposed to do on offense, and you get a 34-3 game. And it's just like, dude, like, at some point, the ACC is going to have to realize that, just saying that you're good and, like, saying that you don't want to use the portal because you believe in development that's not going to be good enough anymore when we get down to, like, hey, your conference only has one team in the playoff. And by the way, Dabo, you haven't done anything in the playoff recently. Now, 4 years in a row? Like, yeah. Who wants to go play for Dabo Swinney? Like, I don't.
And you might want to put an extra body on Jalen Walker, because a homeboy gets after the quarterback.
Yeah, right.
Like I just thought it was a remarkable weekend and a real disaster for the ACC. By
the way,
and I'm not trying to use hyperbole, but I feel like it was a disaster for the ACC.
Are you going to give your squad some credit for going in to A&M and winning a ball game? You're gonna give Marcus Freeman, some love?
No, Texas A&M is not very good. I think we learned very quickly that Texas A&M is not good, because I got to be honest with you, we can sit here and we can talk about Notre Dame all day long. And having watched every snap of that game,
Notre Dame, our mother.
Yeah, I was not impressed with that offense. And we can sit here and we can We can talk about Notre Dame and oh my God and holy cow and wow and all of your do your hand signals and shit. The bottom line is, with all due respect, Riley Leonard is not a big time quarterback, and there's a reason he was at Duke. And you look at that defense. All credit to Marcus Freeman. That defense was unbelievable. I'm telling you, if Jack Kaiser's not a top 10 pick, 15 pick, I don't know. Then nobody needs a linebacker, because that dude's off his rocker good, like amazing good. I can go on about that defense, Jalen Sneed. We can talk all day long about Notre Dame's defense. I have nothing good to say about the offense, because that, in my opinion, was ineptitude at its finest. Riley Leonard is not a big-time quarterback. And yes, we can all talk about how Notre Dame's going to the college football playoff. Congratulations. Your schedule, I think they played 2 true road games. You're going to the college football playoff. Well, you better. Their offense is not elite. And I'm not trying to be, Captain Negative here. We at Notre Dame have an elite defense and a really average offense. And that usually is not going to win you games in college football. This sadly feels to me like a team. And again, I'm open to the idea that my heart won't go on. I am open to the idea that perhaps my Golden Dome shaded glasses make me a little more negative than I need to be. That offense is an offense that's going to lose you a game this year.
I agree. I think that not only will it lose you a game in the regular season, but assuming you make the playoff, that's an offense that runs into a Georgia, let's say, or a great defense, in the SEC or the Big Ten, and you run out of steam, because ultimately, you can get stops, but you got to score points, and I think the trouble is you when you're basically a field goal generating offense, which is exactly what that was, in my opinion. You're not going to win the big game that you need. You can get by on that schedule, but you're not going to be able to get over the hump, if you will. And that's the hard part. And I think that, I do think they deserve a lot of credit for going in there, and winning that game. I mean, that game was in question for a long time, and then you kind of found a way to take control. But yeah, I understand why you feel that way about the offense. I don't disagree.
I think, again, I will just continue to say it's an elite defense. That defense is very, very good. And what more do I need to talk about with Notre Dame than to point out that USC absolutely handled their business? And that was, do you want to apologize now? Do you want to?
I mean, should we? I want to give Lincoln credit.
Should we just completely stop the show so that you can talk about how awesome and good looking I am, and the fact that I told you that the USC defense was going to be remarkably better, and then they came out and Chaboy looked like a genius, even though you'll never say that. I warned you about this defense.
Yeah, the thing with the USC defense that I think is so impressive is that the front seven is just way better. The defensive line, the linebackers, they're actually able to stop the run now.
They can cover. They can cover. They don't get beat constantly.
Right, but they don't get beat constantly over the top because they can actually stop the run. So they don't have to suck up to the line.
And I just want to point out that USC, you look at the numbers. Did they sack the quarterback repeatedly and just beat his ass? No, they didn't. Anybody want to guess how many sacks USC had? 0. They did it with elite linebacker play and coverage. That's how they won that game. And that tells you that this defense with UCLA's defensive coordinator is very good. And I think when I look at Miller Moss, that bro needs to be very thankful for the fourth quarter. Because that was not, and I understand he had 378 and a touchdown, and totally get it. Miller Moss better be goddamn thankful that he had that fourth quarter, because if he doesn't make that throw to the corner in the end zone, this is a loss. Now he did, and you got to give him credit for that. But what I'm telling you is Lincoln Riley is an elite developer of quarterbacks. And Miller Moss is a guy that's been in this system for 3 years. He's from Santa Monica. He's a local kid.
Mm-hmm. And
he made the throw he needed to make. And then they ran in for that touchdown late to really seal this game. That, my friends, was an unbelievable victory. And you and everybody else who has slandered Lincoln Riley, you and everybody else who has said Lincoln needs fired, you guys need to mea culpa. And you guys need to understand that Lincoln Riley had a hell of a weekend.
Yeah, I think the way I would describe where USC is at is Lincoln has the program right where he needs to have it, meaning the defense is obviously way better. And that was the first thing we were looking for in this game. Secondly, I think offensively, you're way more dynamic. Now, that's no thanks to Miller Moss, because I think he is such a downgrade from a generational talent in Caleb Williams that you're having to figure out how to run offense and consistently move the ball down the field. But ultimately, if you said, hey, Lincoln Riley's team is way better defensively and all he's got to do is develop his quarterback, I think you feel pretty good about that. And yeah, if I'm Brian Kelly, I'm pretty pissed off about losing this game. I think that you had multiple opportunities to win the game. And by the way, just want to point out, maybe someone should tell their safety to stop targeting, so then when the backup safety comes in, he doesn't go after the tight end that's going absolutely nowhere and watch the back run into the end zone.
But see, that's called schematics.
Yeah, it's called this backup safety had no idea what the play was doing.
Lincoln Riley, I disagree with that. I think Lincoln Riley called the exact right play. I'd have thrown the ball in the end zone. Honestly, I'd have thrown a ball to the back pylon that can't be intercepted, which is exactly what, if you watch that game, LSU thought they were going to do. And so he came out in a pass formation and ran the ball into the end zone. And it was everything you wanted. And then I would also point out, how did they seal that win? With an interception to end the game.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, I think it was amazing, and Brian Kelly agrees.
Some guys played their butts off tonight, and we're sitting here again. We're sitting here again talking about the same things, about not finishing when you have an opponent in a position to put them away. But what we're doing on the sideline is feeling like the game's over. And I'm so angry about it that I got to do something about it. I'm not doing a good enough job as a coach. And I got to coach him better, because it's unacceptable for us not to have found a way to win this football game. It's ridiculous.
There are no bigger frauds in college football than Brian Kelly. And while I agree, he seemed genuinely frustrated there. The fist pound on the table, that seemed like a bit much.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Kelly's not an elite college football coach. I can only say this. How many times are we getting that speech from Brian Kelly? Because we got that speech after Manti Te'o's girlfriend died, and they died on the field against Alabama. He apologized. Right? Like, this is who Brian Kelly is. He's not a guy that's going to win you the biggest games. And when you have guys, and I agree 100% with his assessment, LSU thought they had won the game. They thought they'd won the game. No, you didn't. No, it turns out that there were 3 plays you couldn't make at the end of the game, and that's why. Anyway, my point is USC won the game and you didn't. But this is who Brian Kelly was at the Almighty, the beloved. This is who he was at Notre Dame. And he's not going to change. They're not going to win the biggest games. And everybody loves to point to go for it at the goal line against Alabama. Okay, cool. That was a great national. Oh, wait, that wasn't for a national championship. It just felt like it. It just felt like it because you're not Alabama. You're never going to be Alabama unless Brian Kelly's not there.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian Kelly can bang the tabletop. And the bottom line is, and the story out of that game is, Lincoln Riley's not dead yet. And all you hyenas dancing on his grave and pronouncing him incompetent and saying he needs fired as though he's Neil Brown at West Virginia.
I never said he needed to be fired. I said he had to win
You're
the
out
big
of your
game,
mind.
and he's off to a great start.
You're out of your mind.
Okay.
Miller Moss was 27 of 36, 378 and a touchdown. Now, he also, I believe that he also peed himself several times.
Yeah.
But the fact that they only ran for 72 yards and they beat LSU tells you LSU's not great. Because as much as this is a huge win, and it's a huge win, USC's not great either. USC is good, not great, until they prove themselves. And we're going to find out pretty quick.
Well, and again, I think your best point is Miller Moss just has to develop. And I think that's the biggest thing coming out of this game. Yes, it's a huge win. Lincoln deserves a ton of credit. Absolutely. And I would agree. All the haters need to show up and apologize today. And I've never said he needs to be fired, but what I did say is he needs to win the big game, and he finally did that.
Pretty sure you said he sucks and he doesn't know how to coach football.
No, I didn't say that, but I think that the biggest thing is when is the next time they play a big time opponent like LSU? How long do they have?
They have Utah State next week.
Wow, man.
They don't have a big game on their schedule until October 12th against Penn State, and that's at the Coliseum. So we'll see. I mean, it is a pretty easy ride. I mean, you look at from here, it's Utah State, at Michigan, Wisconsin, at Minnesota, and then it's Penn State.
So
on October 12th.
By the time you get to Penn State, I think that look, Miller Moss isn't all of a sudden going to become some super athletic quarterback that we all love. He's not going to be what Cam Ward is or what Shador is, or he's not going to be that guy. But what I'm looking for out of him is just a little bit more of the ability to overcome a good defense. A little he had good numbers, but only one touchdown, right? A lot of passing yards, only one touchdown. What I want to see is that turn into 350 plus, but have, 2 touchdowns. And then, like you said, hey, maybe we can run it a little bit more effectively to open up that passing game a little more. I'm not saying that Miller Moss sucks or he's bad, because he's not. He's really good. But I think they're going to need a little more from him in order for them to be able to beat, the Penn States of the world, in order for you to, meet, Oregon or in a potential, Big Ten championship game. You're in order to win that kind of game, you're going to have, a higher level of performance. And that's, I think, again, the biggest thing coming out of this game. This is only their first game, bro. This is their first game to start the season.
All you and I agree with a buddy of mine who's texting me about this right now. Miller Moss is going to have the ball in his hands a lot. And why is that? Because D'Anton Lynn has that defense playing at a very high level.
Yeah.
They're going to get turnovers. And I think when you look at the schedule ahead of them, I think it is going to be very interesting to see how Miller Moss develops week by week, because he's going to make mistakes. And it's just going to be a matter of, who does he make those mistakes against? Because you're not going to see an elite opponent. And I'm probably making too much out of Penn State, but Penn State looked pretty good.
Yeah, that's a legit
against
opponent.
West Virginia. I mean, it's a little surprising. Drew Aller still, it was a little surprising the love that Drew Aller got. Now, again, I agree. 3 touchdowns in a pretty good deep ball is surprising, but you still, in my opinion, won that game because your defense looks very formidable. You held West Virginia. Now, Jaheim White's situation, we'll see where that ends up, but You held West Virginia to under 300 yards of total offense, which in my opinion is saying something. Like 246 total yards out of West Virginia, that's saying something.
At their place.
And I'm not saying that West Virginia is a 400 or 500 yard team, but to hold any college football team under 300 yards is pretty damn impressive. On the road at Morgantown, which is not the easiest place in the world to play. I think it's one of the better home field advantages on the East Coast. That's impressive out of Penn State. And it'll be interesting to see, are they, and I don't want to get too carried away, but are they better than everybody but Ohio State, I guess is the right way to say it? I think they probably are from what I saw of their defense.
Well, I think the hard part with Penn State is that I'm not ready to say that they're better than those teams yet, because Drew Aller needs to show that he can do it against a legitimate, like, big time, talented, fast defense. And
well, they got Bowling Green and Kent State coming up. So
Right.
when the questions will be.
But look at the run through the middle of their schedule.
Here are the Sandusky's future opponents.
Yeah.
Bowling Green, Kent State, Illinois, UCLA. They don't leave home until they go to Los Angeles to play USC on October 12th. So we're not going to have any idea who Penn State is until they go to the Coliseum. And I am guessing that will be a primetime game. That'll be a 5:30 Pacific kickoff at USC. Wisconsin, I was not excited about what we saw from Wisconsin. I was not excited, for the most part, what we saw out of the Big Ten this week. Oregon, what was that?
No idea.
What was that, Oregon? And I don't think we can have too much level of concern when it comes to Oregon. Like, I would be really concerned. Now, it's Idaho, and I think we know that the upstarts, the Wyomings, the Idahos, the Dakotas, they come out and they fight their ass off, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's Idaho. And sorry, dude, that game's at home. I don't want to hear that you took it lightly. If you don't get that performance out of Jordan James, you probably don't win that game. And I think Dylan Gabriel, again, he's another guy that has gaudy numbers where I'm like, did it really feel that way? It didn't feel that way. And obviously, they came out of the locker room flat-footed and turned it around in the fourth quarter. But 24-14 against Idaho? No, Idaho. That was not good, man.
Yeah, that wasn't a great look.
That was not ideal.
I'm going to say the same thing, though. You still won the game, and no one's going to give a damn about this game if you can get it together.
Yeah, but you've got Boise, and then you got to go to Oregon State.
Yeah, Oregon State's going to be a tester.
Boise's going to be a tester. We're gonna figure out. We are going to figure out who Oregon is really quick, because you look at Boise's performance, and I know it was Georgia Southern. They scored 56 points. Now, they gave up 45. But that game was on the road for Boise. Scored 56 points on the road. And I think you have a pretty good idea that Boise's going to be a handful week in and week out.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. All right, less of us, more of you. Let's get to the comment section here on the Monty Show, as always, presented by our good friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks. Download the app, America's favorite daily fantasy partner. Thank you, Scotty Scheffler. Thank you, Colin Morikawa. I won big, fat, spreaded cash all weekend long on Prize Picks. You guys, the promo they have right now, you deposit $5, they'll give you 50 more. Use the promo code Monty. I'm telling you, it is awfully difficult. It is awfully difficult to look at this, to look at these lineups and ask yourself, hey, how did we do there? Well, thank you, Travis Hunter. Thank you, Riley Leonard. Barely. I had him 149.5 yards. He went for 158. Thank you, Jalen Milroe. I had him for half a passing yard. Thank you. How about you? Anybody see Jalen Milroe? Did Alabama miss a beat? That kid's a better quarterback this year than he is at any other time in his Alabama career. But thank you, Justin Steele. He made me money. Like I had a really good weekend on Prize Picks, and it was impressive. Use the promo code Monty, MONTY. Here's how it works. It's pretty simple, right? Like if you look at yardage this week in the NFL, I think I told you that Caleb Williams is half a yard. Half a yard is the promo on Caleb Williams for the Bears. Versus the Titans, he's half a yard, more or less. That's your whole question. Do you take Caleb Williams more or less than half a yard passing? You're going to take more. Then you're going to pick two more in the NFL, college football, whatever you like. And you're going to put $5 on it on a flex play because you only have to cash 2 or 3 to win. And you're going to win. It's super easy. I'm telling you, it's the best daily fantasy promo in the business. You deposit 5, they give you 50 more. Use the promo code Monty, MONTY, the promo code Monty at Prize Picks, America's favorite daily fantasy app. Let's see. Mike Smith, USC not going undefeated. No, I don't think USC is going undefeated. They're the best team in the country, even though Lincoln Riley's the worst coach Jake's ever seen. They're not going undefeated. There's not a chance in the world that they are going undefeated. I think it is asking a lot. If you look at SC's schedule, I think they're probably going to lose that Penn State game. It's at home. I think that's one loss. I think that game at Washington is going to be very interesting. Because I don't know that we know who Washington is yet. Washington is, I mean, it was Weber and
yeah.
I don't think we have any idea who Washington is
game.
yet. Yeah, but they've got Eastern Michigan, Washington State, Northwestern, Rutgers, Michigan, at Iowa is probably the first real test of a game for Washington. At Indiana, then USC. I think that USC game's the whole world.
I think the USC at Michigan game is going to be really interesting. USC should win that game.
Michigan's very average.
I understand.
Michigan is not Michigan's not elite in any way, shape, or form. And I don't even think Michigan is at the end of the day, is Michigan at all a factor in the Big Ten?
No, but
they're not.
What time are you going to play that game? If you're USC, you're probably playing that game at like what?
1:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, not what, 11 a.m. Pacific.
Yeah, I don't think that matters when you're on the road and you're trying to prove a point. And Lincoln Riley, in my opinion, is a guy that I know he's a terrible coach and you think he should be fired, but Lincoln Riley is a guy that has his guys ready to play every single week. The time zone is not an issue. I think Michigan is a very average football team. There is nothing special. There is nothing unique.
And if that's the case, they should go in and blow them out at their place.
I think
if that's the case.
I think that will absolutely be the case. I think you are watching again another Michigan team that is just not able to move the football in explosive plays. They're not a chunk play offense. Davis Warren struggled massively against Fresno State. And again, I just say if that team doesn't run for 150 yards, they're going to lose the game. And I think against Texas this week, Texas looked really, really good. Really, really good. I would be surprised if that wasn't anything but a 17-point win for Texas. I just think Michigan is so incredibly average. There's nothing that Michigan does, and there is nothing that Michigan did that was elite.
Hey, and again, I'm not saying that
nothing.
We should expect Michigan to beat USC. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's a road game at the Big House, and when we talk about USC not going undefeated, that's one of the games. Now they should beat Michigan. I know.
I don't think there's any question.
I know. But again, we know how college football goes sometimes. We know things happen that shouldn't happen. So I'm just telling you, I wouldn't just look right past that game.
Yeah, I think it is. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. And I think it is. I think this conference in the Big Ten is going to be. I think the Northwest is going to play an incredibly big part of the final picture, because I mean, I know everybody wants to talk about Ohio State, but did we really learn anything about Ohio State this weekend? You're playing Akron. You didn't. Right? You're not going to learn anything about Ohio State until Iowa comes to town with that defense.
Right.
That's when we learn about Ohio State.
But again, with the setup of that schedule, because you have such a long run up to Iowa, I would expect Ohio State to torch Iowa. I would expect you to be like dialed in offensively. Will Howard and those receivers, I would expect them to be clicking, like absolutely ready to go. And that's the advantage Ohio State has.
Yeah.
With the way the schedule sets up.
Yeah, and I think they will coast. They will coast. And we're not going to find out how good Ohio State. And I think, listen, who are we kidding? Ohio State's very good. But when you're as talented as they are on paper, you've got to come out and show that week in and week out. And you don't get that chance until Iowa. You've got to stay healthy through these next 3 games. Through these next 3 weeks of football, you got to stay healthy.